Warning, this episode contains content that may be disturbing to some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. We often see the lives of actors and wish that we had that for ourselves, but it just goes to show that you really need to be careful what you wish for. An actor who had just made his big break makes a rather big mistake. In 1987, Matthew Broderick was riding on the success of his film Ferris Bueller's Day Off while vacationing in Ireland with his then secret girlfriend, actress Jennifer Grey, whom he met on the set of the movie. Matthew and Jennifer had rented a red BMW to get around the Irish countryside, and visibility had been good during their travels, but the roads were slick from a brief downpour that covered the area. But Matthew was driving well, according to a police officer who followed the BMW for several miles. But that suddenly changed as Matthew, with Jennifer in the passenger seat, for unknown reasons, crossed into the opposite lane and crashed head-on into a brown Volvo containing two passengers, 30-year-old Anna Gallagher and her mother, 63-year-old Margaret Doherty, both of whom died upon impact. While Jennifer walked away unscathed, Matthew wasn't as lucky. He suffered a broken leg, cracked ribs, in addition to a collapsed lung and a concussion that was bad enough that he had no recollection of the entire day of the crash. Though he recovered, Matthew still faced charges of causing death by dangerous driving, a sentence that would have put him behind bars for 5 years. However, the court only convicted him of a smaller misdemeanor, for which his only punishment was a $175 fine. The outraged family called the ruling a travesty of justice, even though they held no ill will against the actor, knowing Matthew would have to live with the results of his actions for the rest of his life. The actor says to this day, the crash and the lives lost still haunt him. It's always good to see a victim put their abuser in their rightful place. It was 1965, and Fay DeWitt, an actress who played on Mork and Mindy, held a letter opener tightly in her grasp before viciously attacking her ex-husband, a playwright named Ray Allen, and stabbing him repeatedly. Her husband was overwhelmed by the assault and succumbed to his injuries, and just like that, Fay was in the spotlight again, but this time for murdering her ex-husband. Fay's career may have ended right there, had it not been discovered that Ray had actually broken into her home and began assaulting her. This uncovered years of terrible abuse that Ray inflicted on Fay, and Fay wasn't going to take it anymore. Fortunately, she came out on top and continues her acting career today. Nothing enhances a person's character better than real-life experience. An actress, an author, and a rapper, Felicia Pearson has seen a lot in her life. Felicia's acting career is most notable for her part in The Wire, but crime was something she was more personally familiar with. Before she was even a teenager, she began selling drugs, which was obviously a path that just led to more and more trouble. In 1995, when Felicia was only 14, she got into a fight with a 15-year-old girl who was armed with an aluminum baseball bat. Felicia claimed the girl attempted to beat her with the bat, and for this, Felicia withdrew a gun and shot the girl dead. Felicia was charged with second-degree murder and sentenced to 2 consecutive 8-year prison terms. She was released after 6.5 years. Unfortunately, in 2011, Felicia was involved in another drug-related crime, but has said she wishes to move on from a life of criminal activity. Temptation is at times a stepping stone to destruction. American actor Lane Garrison, who is mostly recognized for playing the role of inmate Tweener on Prison Break, has been no stranger to prison, even from offset. On December 2, 2006, Lane, who was 26 at the time, was out grocery shopping in Beverly Hills when he met 3 teenagers. 2 15-year-old girls named Michelle Ohana and Chen Sagi, and 17-year-old Von Sedian. After bragging about his status as a Hollywood actor, the teens invited Lane to a high school party, and Lane not only agreed to attend, but offered to buy alcohol and even drive them to the gathering. While at the party, Lane partook in cocaine and drank until his blood alcohol level was 0.2, over twice the legal limit. Eager to continue the festivities, he offered to drive the teens back to the store to purchase more alcohol, and when they asked if he was safe to drive, he assured them they would all be well. Lane and the three teenagers got back into his SUV, only they never made it back to the store, and one of them would never return home at all. Under the influence of multiple substances, Lane crashed his car into a tree on South Beverly Drive, severely injuring the two girls and killing Vaughn. Lane pled guilty to vehicular manslaughter but was only charged with a 3.5-year sentence, less than half the maximum sentence. He was also forced to pay over $300,000 to the families of the teenagers, but no amount of money could undo the death of Vaughn, and his family and classmates mourned their loss. Lane was released from prison in 2009 after serving just 2 years, but said in a tearful apology that the remorse and guilt he feels is genuine and that he's felt it every day since. Some people only play good guys on TV. Michael Jace would be easily recognized by fans of The Shield, where he played a Los Angeles police officer. Michael often played an individual who was responsible for keeping people safe, but his true character betrayed that role. Michael had been married to April Jace for 11 years. April was an avid runner and had won many competitions. The two had 2 sons together, but eventually Michael began to grow suspicious that April was no longer being faithful to their marriage. On May 19, 2014, police arrived at Michael's Los Angeles home after receiving a report of domestic violence and a call from Michael himself saying he shot his wife. When police entered his home, they found April dead from multiple gunshot wounds. Michael had shot her in the back and then in the legs, specifically to destroy her greatest passion in life, running. Both of their sons witnessed the murder, one of them recalling that Michael said, "You like to run so much, why don't you try running to heaven," before shooting her. Michael was sentenced on June 10th, 2016 to 40 years to life for the murder of April Jace. Sometimes a person still needs to pay, even if the event was a complete accident. Rebecca Gayheart is not only an actress, but a model who has a bit of experience in the darker side of the screen, having played parts in Scream 2, Vanished, and Nip Tuck, to name a few. It was no secret that Rebecca was hardworking and on her way to a successful acting career, but on June 13, 2001, Rebecca had an experience that would change a number of lives, never mind her own. While driving her car through Los Angeles, a 9-year-old boy walked across the street and right into Rebecca's path. Unfortunately, she was unable to stop in time, and she struck the young boy, who died of his injuries the following day. Rebecca pled no contest to vehicular manslaughter and was sentenced to 3 years of probation, along with a suspended license, a fine, and 750 hours of community service. Rebecca feels great remorse for the horrible accident and said she would carry the events from that day with her for the rest of her life, but has done well at continuing her career. Proof that the hardest points in life shape us into who we become. Charles S. Dutton was not only a producer of HBO's The Corner, but both a television and screen actor known mostly for his role in Rudy and Alien 3, with smaller parts in many other films over the years. But life hasn't always been smooth sailing for the actor, especially in his youth. At the age of 17 in Baltimore, Maryland, Charles decided to drop his education in favor of chasing his dreams of becoming a boxer. However, he got into a fight with a young man and stabbed him, mortally wounding him. Charles contested that the violent act had been one of self-defense, but he was found guilty of manslaughter and was sentenced to 7 years behind bars. He served out his full 7 years and was released, the weight of his actions still heavy on his shoulders. But Charles credits his time behind bars for turning his life around, saying in an interview that if he hadn't served time, he would have either been dead or strung out on alcohol and drugs, and never discovered his love for acting, a dream he still pursues to this day. Many people enjoy a nice mixed drink, but there's plenty of things that those drinks don't mix with. Amy Locane hasn't done too much acting, but she did have a role playing Sandy Harling in the first season of Melrose Place, a well-known soap opera in 1992. She also played love interest to Johnny Depp in the 1990 cult classic Cry Baby, among other roles in other productions. In 2006, Amy retired from acting on screen after getting engaged, and in 2008 was married. Things seemed great from the outside, but on June 27, 2010, Amy had been drinking and was out driving. As an elderly couple were turning into their driveway, returning home after spending time out of the house, Amy collided into their car, severely injuring the man and killing his wife. It was discovered that Amy's blood alcohol level was 3 times the legal limit at the time. For this, she was eventually sentenced to 3 years in prison. She was released on parole on June 12, 2015. A horrific on-set accident with an actor who had no idea he was about to end someone's life. Michael Massee, an actor known for playing the gentleman in the recent The Amazing Spider-Man, was first recognized in the 1994 cult hit The Crow, where he played the villain opposite the hero, played by Brandon Lee, the son of legendary martial artist and actor Bruce Lee. But Brandon dreamt of paving his own way in Hollywood, and The Crow was shaping up to skyrocket him to A-list status. Unfortunately, that all changed during the filming of a pivotal scene in which Brandon's character was to be shot with a .44 caliber revolver. During the shoot, the prop crew was under serious time constraints and placed a blank round in the barrel of the gun, not realizing the lead tip of a previous dummy round was still lodged inside. The gun was handed to Michael Massee and the scene played out just as rehearsed until the shot was fired at Brandon, sending the lead tip straight into his abdomen where it severed an artery. Brandon was rushed to the hospital, but after 6 hours of intensive surgery, he finally succumbed to his injuries. The death was ruled accidental, and Brandon's family and the crew mourned their loss, but went on to complete and release the film in his honor, so he would forever be immortalized in film as he always had dreamed. Still, 20 years later, Michael, who pulled the trigger, struggles with the events of that fateful day, saying, "I don't think you ever get over something like that." He has never watched the film and still refuses to. A story that goes to show the importance of mental health. Johnny Lewis was 28 years old and well on his way into his acting career. He was perhaps best known for playing half-sack Epps in the first 2 seasons of Sons of Anarchy. Johnny had a troubling past, having been involved in drugs and had been arrested 3 times between 2011 and 2012 for outbursts of violence and attempting to break into a person's house. In 2011, Johnny suffered head injuries from a motorcycle accident, but showed a great aversion to psychiatric treatment. On September 26, 2012, Johnny broke into the Los Angeles home of his 81-year-old landlord, Catherine Davis. He entered her bedroom, where she was, and began beating her, before eventually strangling her to death. He then violently attacked Catherine's cat before killing and dismembering it. Johnny eventually ended up on the roof of Catherine's garage and fell off and died on the pavement of her driveway. The coroner ruled Johnny's death as accidental and claimed that all tests indicated Johnny had no drugs or alcohol in his system at the time of the murder, and to this day, his motive remains unknown. That's all for this episode. Be sure to subscribe to my channel now because you won't want to miss what's next. Also, be sure to watch the last episode on 10 photos taken right before death. You can either press on screen or press the link in the description below. And I'll see you next Wednesday.